Good Monday morning to you. Are you still pro-life? Do you still think abortion's killing a little kid? If you said yes, our question to you is, what are you doing here in New York? The governor doesn't think there's any room for you.
Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
Our guest today is Assemblyman Bill Nojay. And I've known Bill for a long time, so I'm not going to horse around with Assemblyman. I'm just going to call him Bill. If somebody decides to run against him, I'll get very formal and call him Mr. Nojay. There you go. Now, Bill Nojay, I think probably most people in Albany would agree with the statement that Andrew Cuomo may not be the brightest light on the street, that he's only a shadow of his father. But what he said last week is really pretty stupid, isn't it?
The SAFE Act, the Republican Party candidates are running against the SAFE Act. It was voted for by moderate Republicans who run the Senate. Their problem is not me and the Democrats. Their problem is themselves. Who are they? Are they these extreme conservatives who are right to life, pro-assault weapon, anti-gay? Is that who they are? Because if that's who they are, and if they are the extreme conservatives, they have no place in the state of New York. Because that's not who New Yorkers are.
It was a jaw-dropper. Politicians are usually pretty polished about these things and saying, well, it's a big country or a big state and people have different opinions, that sort of thing when they're met with criticism. I think this governor is showing incredibly thin skin by saying that if you're a conservative Republican, you basically should get out of town, leave the state, go someplace else, don't live here anymore. It was an amazing statement for a governor, especially of a state the size and the diversity of New York, to essentially say that an awful lot of us might as well just move out.
Because we're either pro-life or we think that we have a right to guns, right?
Well, it was a much even a broader statement than that. It was that conservative Republicans don't belong in New York State.
Did he actually say that?
He referenced the Second Amendment issue, the objections to his SAFE Act, and to opposition to his expansion of abortion rights. But I think what you're seeing in this fellow is the New York City politician coming out of the woodwork. He covers up, he tries to keep it quiet, but at the end of the day, you can take the boy out of Queens, but you can't take Queens out of the boy. And he is showing that New York City left-wing Democratic arrogance towards those of us that live here in upstate New York. And it came through in all of its, frankly, all of its ugliness in that interview that he gave to public radio last, I think it was Friday morning. So we're seeing what his true stripes are. And I'm sure that he now regrets it because he's already, in the last couple of days, he's gotten a lot of what we call blowback in the press. But at the end of the day, he's shown what he really believes about us.
Yeah, I mean, the usual statement, if I've offended anyone. If I've offended anyone. Yeah, that usual baloney. But he did offend a lot of people. On the other hand, let me tell you something. Now, listen, you know, because you know me. I'm not a big-time partisan Republican. I'm just not. I am conservative, yes. And I have a worldview that is not the same as Governor Cuomo or Barack Obama. But I'm not, as you well know, because we've talked about it, I'm not a Bob Heineman, for example. I'm not a big Republican. All right, now, having said all that, I still don't understand why the Republican Party can't get behind someone like Donald Trump, who could, I think, easily beat Cuomo and would probably be a much better governor. Any way you look at it.
You know why it is? I'll tell you, because you listen to the show that we do every day, that runs on the stations around upstate New York. And, we don't pull any punches about Republicans and certainly not Democrats. And I'll tell you, there really is what the conservative columnist George Will refers to as the government class. Mm-hmm. People that they might be Republicans, they might be Democrats, they might be officials of the Conservative Party or the Independence Party, but these are people who live their lives in politics and government, and they feel comfortable dealing with their fellow members of the government class, but they don't feel comfortable with people that are outside of the government class, people that have not made their careers on it. In other words, Andrew Cuomo feels very comfortable, let's say, with a Dean Skelos, because even though one is a Democrat, the other one's a Republican, they're both members of the government class. But a Dean Skelos, let's say, does not feel comfortable with people in the Tea Party, because the Tea Party are overwhelmingly people that have never held government jobs or don't believe in big government spending and government programs to solve every problem. So in many respects, what we're seeing is a split in New York politics, and I think this is broader. I think this is an American phenomenon, that the Democrats of the government class and the Republicans of the Republican class, they put on professional wrestling and make it look like they're disagreeing and so on. But at the end of the day, they're all sort of in it together, versus the rest of us that have not made lifetime careers out of government. And the government folks do not feel comfortable with the non-government. Donald Trump has never held a government job in his life. I think that's why, whether it be Democrats like Andrew Cuomo and Sheldon Silver in the Assembly, or all of the full-time government people, or even the Republicans, like the leadership of the Republican Party in New York State, don't feel comfortable with a private sector person like Donald Trump running for high office. That's just a phenomenon. George Will's written extensively about it, a lot of other commentators. I think you're seeing it play out right now in New York State politics.
Here, I was recently, not on vacation, but I was in Phoenix for a couple of weeks, and I had a lot of chance to read. And I found the Wall Street Journal was the best thing to read. I've given up reading the New York Times. I don't believe them anymore. I used to read it quite well, quite a lot, not anymore. And the Phoenix newspaper is just another Gannett publication. You know what I mean by that. But here's what I gleaned from some of the reading and some of the books I read in the last month or so. When the Democrats take power, and we're seeing it here in New York, they push, of course, abortion. They push legalized marijuana. They're anti-gun, and to be very honest about it, they're sort of anti-God. And they seem to get elected with that, even though many of their supporters are theoretically religious people who are pro-life, theoretically, and are appalled by same-sex marriage and the gay agenda. But that's what the Democrats push, and they still get elected. Now, Trump, I think, could easily beat Cuomo. But your guy, Ed Cox, chairman of the Republican Party, is making it difficult for him. Why? You said why, because Trump is not part of the government class, huh?
Ed Cox has been involved with politics at the highest level literally his entire adult life. I mean, he got married in the Rose Garden by marrying Richard Nixon's daughter, had 3 United States presidents show up for his wedding. You don't get much higher than that when you're 20, in your early 20s. And he's just continuing it now into his 60s. Ed Cox is a government guy. And Dean Skelos and the other Republican establishment leaders across the state, they simply don't understand why a private sector person like Donald Trump would want to run for governor. No less do they take him seriously as a potential gubernatorial candidate. And I'm not saying that Donald Trump will run. I agree with you that if he does run, he will get the Republican nomination, and he will beat Andrew Cuomo. It'll be a tough race. I mean, get your popcorn, because we'll be one of the top political contests in the entire United States this fall if Donald Trump enters the race. Look, I'm encouraging the guy to run. I've met with him now on 3 separate occasions. I've had a number of telephone conversations with him, talking about the race and everything from who could manage the race, who's got the experience and the talent, to what the agenda would be, to possible running mates on the Republican ticket. He's a very engaging guy. He's a good listener. I think he would be a great governor, and that's why I'm doing everything I can to get him to enter the race, and to do it in a way, though, that tries to bring in a big tent of both, as much as I may pain me to say it, I think we got to have a unified Republican Party with conservatives and with fiscally responsible independent voters as well, and Democrats who are just tired of seeing the jobs leave New York State. We had another factory close, or announce its closing in the North Country of the Adirondacks this week. Another 300 jobs leaving the state. It just seems like there's hardly a week that goes by that we don't find out about another company that's leaving for one of the southern states or leaving the United States because they just can't make it here anymore. That's not open for business. That's closing down the business, and we just got to turn it around here in upstate New York.
Funny thing you should say that. After this break, I'm going to ask you about all these commercials that I see wherever you are. I saw them in Phoenix. Come to New York. They don't even want to think about New York, but I want to see what this is all about. We'll be back with Assemblyman Bill Nojay in just a moment.
Attention pro-lifers and pro-gun advocates. New York State is now open for business except for you. Attention citizens, pro-lifers and pro-AR-15 supporters. Governor Andrew Cuomo says there's no room for you.
Extreme conservatives, they have no place in the state of New York.
Attention all extreme conservatives, the governor wants you out of the state because you're not who New Yorkers are.
That's not who New Yorkers are.
This is not an official eviction notice. This is us asking nicely. Revolution's over. We're in charge now. We won, so we can do whatever we want, even if it's in defiance of existing laws. We repeat, if you're pro-life or pro-assault rifle, the governor wants you out. What are you waiting for? Rush Limbaugh and Tom Golisano already left. Extreme conservatives, time for you to go.
We're starting your week with, I'll be very blunt about this, one of the few politicians, and he's not really a politician. He's an attorney who turned to politics not because of a living, but because he's not going to make a profession of it, but because he saw a great need in Albany. Bill Nojay. Have the highest respect for him because he's done in a short time, done a lot of very, very interesting things, including, you may not want to say this, Bill, but I will, being the brains behind this operation to get Donald Trump to head the Republican ticket. Now, here's what your friend Heinemann says. Heinemann says that Trump should run, even if the Republicans have a primary, forget who he's running against because he won't win anyway, and just concentrate on beating Cuomo. Now, here's the only problem with that. The Republicans will dig up dirt on Trump. They'll damage him, and I don't think the man wants that. I mean, who wants that, right?
Well, that's the problem. You know, modern politics has become the politics of personal destruction, as they call it, and it's really too bad. I mean, if you take a look at Andrew Cuomo's entire career, he's made stabbing opponents in the back and dirty campaigning sort of an art form. He's done that his entire adult life, going way back to when he was his father's campaign advisor. You remember when Ed Koch was also going for the Democratic nomination, and all of a sudden there were signs all around New York City saying, vote for Cuomo, not for the homo. And there's no question.
Did he do that? Did he really do that?
Oh, that is part of the folklore of New York City politics.
Terrible. And Ed Koch was a highly respectable guy. I mean, forget the homosexuality. He was a very, very decent guy. Yeah.
But that's the kind of dirty campaigning that Andrew Cuomo has always been known for. If you take a look at his history in the Clinton administration at HUD, you look at his relationships with real estate. Look, the guy's got $33 million in his bank account. Get this, only 0.2% of his contributions come from average people contributing. In other words, less than $1,000. Put another way, 99.8% of his contributions come from big-ticket donors. They're not doing that because of his charm and good looks. It's all part of the pay-to-play culture that you contribute to my campaign, you get something that you want out of government, whether it be a tax break for your real estate deal or favorable zoning treatment from some appointed official. It's all the way Andrew Cuomo approaches government, which is one big ATM machine, and he's the guy that runs the machine.
His father was a better man than that. I mean, his father was a bright guy. I didn't agree with him all the time. In fact, most of the time I didn't agree with him, but he was a bright fellow, was he not?
He was, but if you take a look at things like who built the union contracts behind the Jacob Javits Center in New York City, there was an awful lot of backroom dealing. In fact, it's always been believed. People say, gee, I wish I knew why Mario Cuomo didn't run for president or become a Supreme Court judge. Well, there's a lot of feeling that it's probably because he couldn't survive the background investigation.
Yeah, I think that's true.
There was a lot of rumors about that. I don't know which ones were true. All I know is he didn't run for the presidency, and he was not appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States, even though in many other respects he would have been a natural candidate for both positions.
Okay, funny thing, you should mention the presidency. I'm looking at a quote here by, from Clarence Darrow. I love this one. Darrow said, this is a guy probably talking in the 20s or maybe earlier than the 1920s. When I was a boy, I was told that anybody could become president. I'm beginning to believe it, unquote.
Yeah.
Now, listen, on the Republican side, I think they have a very rich stable of people to go up against the Democrats. But they have a knack for blowing it. Now, the latest name being pushed around is Jeb Bush. You got Rand Paul. Christie, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with this? It's like a jaywalking event, but a major scandal may come from it. Who do you see out there as a viable candidate who could lead this country in a totally different direction from Barack Obama?
Well, there are probably a dozen viable Republican candidates. I mean, you've mentioned a few of them. I'm not in the prediction business, and I'll tell you why. I made a prediction on the radio show back in 2007, end of 2007. I said, these people talking about Barack Obama, the chances of somebody named Barack Hussein Obama,
you're right,
with absolutely no record of accomplishment in the United States Senate,
or anywhere else,
coming out of the Chicago political machine, beating Hillary Clinton, I said we're someplace between nil and zip. Well, given my track record for a prediction, I'm not going to make any for 2016. I really don't know. I think, I'll tell you this. I think if Donald Trump is elected governor of New York State, that catapults him to the front rankings of the Republican list. That's why I think the whole country is going to be watching whether or not Donald Trump declares sometime in the next 3-4 weeks that he wants to run for governor of New York.
And you have said there's a 50-50 chance he still will get in, right?
Yeah, that would be my guess. I mean, again, I don't mean to hedge it and to dodge the question. I really don't know. There's a lot of pressure on him to do it. And if he is interested in the presidency, this would be a good stepping stone to that. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I'll tell you this. I was in his office and last Friday before the big meeting with 48 Republicans from across the state, and we were talking privately. And it was very look around the walls in his office and the kinds of projects that he's working on. This guy's got real estate development projects, hundreds of millions of dollars all around the world. In many respects, he's almost too busy to run for governor. On the other hand, if he decides that this is the right time in his life and his career to give it a try, his kids, he's got 3 adult children who are involved with the business, this is probably the right time for him. So that's why I say a lot of things pulling him to run, a lot of things pushing him away from running, and I'd give it 50-50. But one thing I know for sure, about a month from now, we're going to have our answer.
Well, Bill Nojay, major player in Albany, I think probably the only time, well, I can't say that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's the only time a first-term upstate assemblyman has played such an important role in New York State, and I commend you for that. I've said publicly on this show many times, I don't know anyone smarter, less, I don't want to say devious. That's not even the right word. What's the right word for a politician that never gives you a straight answer? You're not that guy at all.
Yeah. I try. It's sometimes you just don't know. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, you know the answer, you just don't want to tell me. But no, you'd be surprised. In politics, I don't care if it's in Albany or Washington, sometimes you just don't know the answer to questions. So you're not really dodging an answer. You just you got to admit, hey, darned if I know what's going to happen next week.
Yeah. Bill Nojay, thanks a lot. Keep up the wonderful work you're doing up there, the important work you're doing. And we'll be listening at 3 o'clock every Monday through Friday because, boy, folks, I'll tell you, if you want to know what's happening in Washington, but more about what's happening in Albany, nobody has better information than Bill Nojay. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, sir. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye. I make no bones about that. I think he's probably a tremendous asset for the state of New York. I said that before he was elected. I felt he would be, and he is. Happen to know Bill personally, and that does affect it because he's a very nice guy, too. Anyone who knows him will tell you that. A very decent guy. And he is the one that's behind this whole Trump thing. He's got others on board with him now, but it was his idea, and he's the one that's got Donald Trump this far. Stay tuned for more news and information here on AM 1480 WLEA. And we have some great shows coming up this week. I hope you'll join us every morning at 8:40. 40.